When I was a kid, I'd daydream in class about my dream video game. All of the best pieces of my favorite games smashed together into a totally new formula that had never been experienced before. Fast forward to today, and after getting a computer science degree and a software engineering job to go with it, it dawned on me that I could actually maybe make that game. 8 months ago, I started learning Unreal Engine 5 with the ambition of releasing a video game at some point in the next 5 years. So without further ado, welcome to the first of many devlogs for software, a procedurally generated RPG sandbox game with survival, crafting, village building, and an emphasis on epic boss battles and unique mechanics. Set in a vast ocean of procedurally generated islands, players will have to cultivate the land and fend off enemies to build their small camp into a thriving village full of useful NPCs. These NPCs will be able to assist the player by selling unique goods, upgrading weapons and armor, and automating tasks like farming, gathering resources, and defending the village from hostile intruders. As the player progresses, they'll be faced with taking on some of the island's many bosses. As long as these monsters live, they will routinely attack your village and pose a threat to your people. Eventually, the player will get to sail to new, faraway islands with completely different, more valuable resources and more difficult enemies. Eventually, you will grow your tiny camp into a village, to a full-blown, self-sufficient empire of interconnected towns, castles, and villages, with you in charge. With the weapons and armor you've crafted, and the NPCs you've met along the way, you'll have to defend your land from invasions and work together to defeat formidable enemies in a world that just sort of keeps expanding. My general design philosophy to build this fucking hugely ambitious game is as follows. If I can make a full game worth of procedurally generated content confined to a single island, meaning around 20-something hours of rewarding, exciting, and fun gameplay, packed with village building, boss fights, and hunting for crafting materials to build really cool shit, I could simply fill the world with new, highly different islands, where the resources are a lot cooler, and the bosses are a lot harder. The development time for the first island will be a pretty fucking long time, because I'll have to figure out how to procedurally generate 10 to 20 hours of compelling game content. The next million islands will take way less time to make because I can use all of the systems from the first island, but just swap out the bosses, enemies, plants, animals, and loot, and scale up the difficulty. This formula could hypothetically go on forever, and is only limited by my capacity to keep making the cool weapons, armor, NPCs, mounts, flora, fauna, enemies, and bosses that make the game worth playing. Think Terraria's procedural world and jaw-dropping breadth of content, but set in a 3-dimensional ocean of islands, where each island is its own biome. Firstly, let's get into how we're going to create the world of Sovereign. Like I said before, my vision for the game is to have a vast, infinite ocean with a variety of procedurally generated islands scattered amongst the tides. In order to procedurally generate the terrain, I'll be using a tool called Gaia. I'm using the indie license, which costs $100, but there is a free version which has nearly all the same features. Gaia uses node-based programming in order to generate complex, highly variable terrain. You can then export the terrain as a height map, which can then be imported into UE5 directly. Using the same tool, I can export masks, which I can apply different materials to. For example, if I want a rocky texture on a steep cliff, I can export all of the areas on the height map with a slope above a certain threshold. Using similar strategies, I can get masks for where to place sand, grass, rocky stones, cliffs, and snow. Next, we'll import our world into Unreal Engine 5. Once the landscape is loaded in, We'll have to create a simple material which incorporates layer blending so that with a single material, we can apply all of the different textures we want to comprise our landscape. Next, in order to give our world some life, we will use UE5's procedural foliage system in order to give the island a lush ecosystem of fauna. It plugs directly into the landscape layer system, so plants will only grow on the layers you specify. Seriously, this tool works wonders. It works by computationally simulating an actual ecosystem. Plant life has a real life cycle and grows over time. Plants disperse seeds, and those seeds grow into more plants. If a seed is in another plant's shadow, that plant won't grow, just like in real life. Seriously, this is an amazing tool. And after trying 3 or 4 different methods of doing foliage, this is by far the best one I've found. Just look at the difference. The combat system is perhaps the most crucial part of the game's feel. Games where the combat feels good are good. Games where the combat feels bad are bad. This is something that I feel to be unquestionably true. Because of this, I will surely be tweaking, modifying and expanding on the game's combat for a very long time. However, it is one of the many systems that need to be developed in order to have a working game. For now, I have a simple system. When the player attacks, it will loop through 4 animations in a sort of combo. While the player attacks, a sphere trace will run from the player's hand, more specifically, a socket placed on the player's weapon hand, to the length of the weapon they hold. If the sphere trace collides with a damageable actor, it will inflict damage upon them, as well as applying a small knockback on them, and prompting them to play a hit animation. Likewise, I also strung together an archery system, which plays a super satisfying twang when you loose, and plays a loud ding sound upon headshots, which is something I love from TF2. In order to have a combat system, you need to have dudes to fight. So I downloaded a bunch of character meshes from the Unreal Marketplace. These happen to be from the game Infinity Blade, which I played on my iPad when I was a kid. Infinity Blade is an Epic Games property and is one of the many games whose assets have been made entirely free and available on the Unreal Engine Marketplace. Thank you, Tim Sweeney. While they are a little dated looking, they will work perfectly as stand-ins until I care to model some enemies myself or find a suitable replacement. Then, I created an enemy blueprint and copied all of the useful code from the player, namely the player stats and attack system. I then rigged up a rudimentary behavior tree so that enemies will continually walk to random points within a certain radius around them until the player comes into their line of sight, at which point they will walk to the player and continually attack them until they are dead, or until the player runs outside the reach of their attack. Again, this is overly simple and a little clunky, but it's good enough for now. The inventory system really sucked to code. For now, it just looks like this. A camera is projected into the UI, so that you can see their changing build in real time. From this screen, they can make changes to their equipment, as well as view the items and resources they've collected. While this is simple and unexciting, it's a huge pain in the arse to develop, and took more time than I'm willing to admit. In the last 8 months, I've learned a ton of crucial game development skills. While I'm a pretty capable web developer, game development is a totally unique challenge. What we have now is a decent foundation for what will eventually become a very early build of a game. Before that happens, there are several systems that need to be developed, such as crafting, building, resource gathering, friendly AI, boss fights, and more. Between now and the next Devlog, I'll be building up the crafting, building, and resource gathering features, as well as expanding on the inventory and equipment system. I'm going to do everything in my power to get all of that done in the next 6 weeks. But God only knows how long this is actually going to take, given that these previous systems took 8 months. However, I'm like way smarter now, and I think I'll be able to force myself to get it done. So, until then, adios. And please drop a follow on the Instagram and TikTok, because I post way more frequently over there. Thanks for watching.